Good evening, fellow traveller, and welcome to Chez Hitchcock. We have had a rash of unexplained homicides lately. I knew you would enjoy hearing that, but I'm terribly upset. You see, with all these people checking in and then not checking out, our books just don't balance. However, I'm sure our house detective will clear them all up just as soon as he finds out who stole his seeing-eye dog. I believe you will be also interested in knowing that we have television in every room. Television cameras, that is. The receiving sets are in the dining room and the casino. I see the supper show will begin in a minute. Just time enough for you to get settled.
Good evening. Welcome to the Shamley Silhouette, yet another analysis of the master of suspense, Alfred Hitchcock. I am your host, Zach Eastman. It has come to my attention that there are indeed people listening to these strange examinations into the legacy of Mr. Hitchcock, and I do want to thank those who have reached out to express that sentiment from the bottom of my silly heart. It does a kind reassurance to know people are enjoying the work, and so long as this series continues in its current form, I shall do my best to hold up to that standard. I do want to thank our last guest, Jack Hanley, by the way. We talked about the legacy of Hitchcock tackling similar subjects in 4 different career posts, and it was a fascinating dissection, and we've got to have him back for more. We've got to have him to talk anything, even if he wants to talk about rope. I'll talk about rope again. I will gladly indulge that if we can find a way to make it interesting. And as always, thank you to Bradley Haig for giving the Shamley Silhouette a home on the Real Nerds podcast site and feed. I cannot even begin to do this without his help, and let alone continue it, so thank you, Brad. Now on to today's episode. So far in this series, we have been discussing Hitchcock by way of his trademark, his moniker, his very reason for still capturing the minds of filmmakers and film fans to this very day, the master of suspense. But what if I were to tell you that he was also a master of humor? You don't believe me? Wait, you do believe me? Oh, good. Then this is going to make things a whole lot easier. Yes, throughout Hitchcock's career, humor has permeated the works that have made him so famous. Nearly, if not every single one of his pictures, has some form of humor that tickles your funny bone, provides a relief from the suspense that he holds the audience in, and manages to stick with us even to this day. It's a key ingredient of his, and one you do kind of wish he would have explored more often in a raw form, like instead of just putting it into a suspense film, making it a full-out comedy. As it is, we are lucky to have not just the introductions to each and every episode of Alfred Hitchcock's Presents as an example of Hitch's dry wit, but we do have 2 motion pictures that give us a look into Hitchcock the comedy filmmaker. One deals with the screwball nature of a legally invalid marriage license and the hijinks that follow Carol Lombard and Robert Montgomery in the aftermath. The other, feeling closer to Hitch's tradition, follows a group of lonely people coming together to get rid of a troublesome dead body through trial and error. I speak, of course, of Mr. and Mrs. Smith from 1941 and The Trouble with Harry. And to get into the discussion of Hitchcock and his travails into the hilarious, I have a special guest with me. He is a writer, a traveler, and a podcaster with 2 shows, Alex P. Keaton Is My Friend, and the Mandarian Orange Show, which he co-hosts with his wife, Janelle. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Phil Vecchio.
Hey, thanks for having me, Zach.
I am so happy we get to talk to each other on this. You were one of the first people I reached out to for this whole shindig, because I remember us discussing Hitchcock at a certain point when we worked together on our background together is we knew each other initially through Brendan Creasy,
right.
Other podcaster, does Radio Brendo Man. And you guys had a short script that you guys wanted to get filmed, so we filmed it. And in that time, we got to know each other a lot more, and I think we actually spoke a lot more at Palm Springs Comic-Con, which
for sure.
I'm not sure if that still exists. I haven't seen many ads for it. But
I think it's still going on, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's fading.
It was an interesting experience, to say the least, and I had never been to Palm Springs before, so and I'd like to go when it's not hot.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous in the summer.
Oh, dude, the sweating is a nightmare. But you have expressed a love of Hitchcock, and
Yes.
As it turns out, when I reached out to you, you gave me a whole breakdown of the stuff that you have tackled and examined yourself, and I actually I was impressed that you've watched the silent films too, because I have only run into a few people who have gone beyond The Lodger and really watched like the earlier silent films, and it's fascinating to have the patience to watch them on those bootleg DVDs that we have today,
Right.
Or at least the majority of them. The Lodger has a Criterion, but stuff like Juno and the Paycock and some other ones have less than quality available to them. The Pleasure Garden, his first film, there's no true restoration available to the public yet.
Right.
But you also have, Downhill, his follow-up to The Lodger, is available on a new restoration on that Lodger Criterion.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's there's no special features attached to that. But the film did get a 2K restoration, so that's pretty fascinating. It's basically a special feature for The Lodger, is what it is.
Yeah, most of those old DVDs, like you said, basically bootleg ones, some of those silent features would be the bonus feature in whatever other random movie it was.
Yeah.
So that's how I collected a lot of them. Well, originally, I collected a lot of the silent ones on old VHS tapes. I mean, that's ages me a bit, but that's where I was first, like, wheeling and dealing in my Hitchcock years, you know.
That's how I was introduced to him, was the VHS introductions to Universal titles. I wore out The Mummy from 1999 when I was a kid, and at the beginning of it, they had two great VHS introduction or commercials. One was for the Universal Monsters, and the other one was for the Alfred Hitchcock collection, which has that synthy version of the Marionette March, the theme to Hitchcock. And there's if you look in the first article of the series, I put the video of that there, and it's interesting to watch it now, because I'm like, man, I don't think this would sell me today. I'd have to
Different times back then, you know.
Yeah, but at the same time, there's a kitschy value to it that I enjoy. I mean, I had the same experience this week when I watched the NSYNC Chili's commercial, and I'd never seen it before, and I was like, wow, I'm not like necessarily happy this exists, but I'm okay with it, and like I'm glad that it brings balance to the universe. So,
Right.
Like, I think they kill one of the NSYNC members in that video, like in that commercial. Like
Do
one of them just like there's a crate of baby back ribs that falls on one of them, and he's just there at the end of the commercial with his feet hanging out. Not unlike Harry's body with the feet sticking out in Trouble with Harry.
Right.
But so you already kind of touched on it a little bit, but let's dive in. How do you get started with Hitchcock as a film fan, as a film goer? Like, what's the origin point?
Well, so the first Hitchcock movie I ever remember seeing was Trouble with Harry, which kind of feeds into the way that my sense of humor has worked my entire life. My parents showed that to me. That my parents loved Hitchcock, and so they were always renting VHS tapes of it, and that's the first one I remember them showing me. And so it was such an eye-opening experience to see that, like, you could laugh about stuff that, you know, normally isn't funny, but if it's looked at in the right way, it's hilarious, you know?
Yeah.
And same thing with, you know, back when I was a kid, Nick at Night would show reruns of the Alfred Hitchcock Presents show. And so those opening and closing bits, like, those are my favorite thing, you know? He's hilarious.
Yeah.
And so from my perspective as a kid, I thought of Alfred Hitchcock as, like, funny, you know, that macabre sense of humor. That was kind of the primary thing I knew about him. So then I really got into these books called The Three Investigators. It's Alfred Hitchcock and the Three Investigators. Mm-hmm. And he's actually a character in the books. he licensed his likeness to this book, and he kind of helps these three kid investigators solve crimes. And meanwhile, he says like jokey stuff, and they go visit him in his Hollywood estate and everything. And so, to me, this is the world of Hitchcock when I'm a kid. Like, he's this funny guy that helps kids solve mysteries, like some kind of a Scooby-Doo extra, and he does funny movies about like dead bodies moving around and stuff. So.
Okay, we live in a world where we're really into the 80s and like putting out stuff like Stranger Things, and even like digging into our nostalgia further with like Goosebumps becoming a movie where R.L. Stein's a character played by Jack Black. I'm just gonna pitch it. We got to make this into a live action movie. Get Anthony Hopkins back in the fat suit.
Oh yes,
and have him help 3 kids solve a mystery.
Oh my gosh, it would be amazing. It would be mind blowing. The crazy part is that 3 Investigator series is huge in Germany. In fact, they stopped making them in like the early 90s, the books, but they continued writing books in German and made like TV shows out of it and stuff. But there's not a lot of English translations of them.
Really? Did they? Yeah. I'm looking this up right now. Did they have somebody playing Hitchcock in this?
I don't know. Well, because here's what happened. Eventually, the license for Hitchcock's license was up. Because it started out while he was still alive. Right. But eventually, the license for his likeness was up, and so they renamed the character and actually reissued some of those early books with I can't remember what his name is, but some generic Hollywood producer, director guy that they would go and talk to.
Oh, I hope it wasn't David O. Selznick.
No, it was like a fictional person. It wasn't a real person at all. So I have, of course, being a sort of almost hoarder type, I have both versions of all, that Hitchcock version and the other ones, and I'm always looking for variants and stuff. So
that is fascinating. I'm looking this up right now. This is an episode in and of itself. Like,
oh yeah,
there may be a way to extend this beyond like when the initial like legacy of Hitchcock with this. We got to just like do a weird audio book / MST3K on on
they're
how
fantastic.
Yeah, dude, it sounds amazing. Like they battled an Egyptian mummy at one point.
Yeah, well, so, and kind of like, I mentioned Scooby-Doo, but it's kind of like that where there's all these supernatural things, but there's always some sort of a real explanation,
Oh, God. That's one that I've never, like, I've never looked into. When Scooby-Doo All-Stars did it, I wonder if Hitchcock ever did one.
Oh, I don't know. That would have been great.
It would have been the ultimate childhood fantasy.
It would have totally fit, yeah.
I'm going to have to check these 3 Investigators books out and
they're fantastic.
Do 5
It's harder to find them now. I'm always looking at used bookstores and swap meets and scraping through eBay, but they're out there if you look for them.
It doesn't look like they're available in any reprint of any kind. I think it's because one of the articles here in Wikipedia says that there was a copyright dispute at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So you've got these, and then do you eventually kind of just fall into rewatch, like getting into the more, I guess, well-known aspects of Hitchcock from the public perspective, like down the line? Like, I'm sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
At some point, you watch like a Psycho and stuff.
Yes, but like I didn't see Psycho till I was in high school, and like something even like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, although it falls under the comedy, I didn't watch that till I was in college because that one was a lot harder to come by, especially then,
Yeah, now it's a little easier, and I say a little because it's true. It's a little easier,
right? But at the time, again, going through like used VHS piles trying to find a copy of it was not easy,
Yeah, and it's not one that a VHS. It's funny because VHS still holds like the record for like the most films that you could that have been released under the format, because as DVD came around, they started culling whatever titles were more popular. Like now that's kind of reversed thanks to Warner Archive, but Warner Archive has really kind of changed the way that works, because now if you really want an older title, you can get an MOD. And like right now, Mr. and Mrs. Smith falls under that category. Although they did release an initial DVD of it when they had whatever Hitchcocks that they had and put it out in a big collection. That's one of those ones I want them to put on Blu-ray to just kind of finish up their whatever acquisitions of Hitchcock they have. But so far, there's no true bite for it out there in the world.
Right. I have that DVD collection. That's what I'm holding on to.
Yeah, the signature collection, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. It's sitting at a not Tower Record, Twist and Shout Records in Colorado. There's one there, and I'm always tempted to get it, but I'm just like, man, like I already spent like $120 getting all the films that I didn't have. So,
well, the great part about it is they do have, even though it's minimal, at least some sort of little special feature on everything, including Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
I know, and actually, when I went to go see Mr. and Mrs. Smith in the theater this week, they showed part of that documentary in the pre-show. Yeah, I kind of wish they had showed the whole thing as the pre-show, because that would have like provided better description and whatnot. But again, you know, they did some really good tributes to Carole Lombard and whatnot, which we will definitely talk more about as we go into the discussion. But so yeah, and so at this point by now though, like you've gone through the gamut of Hitchcock and run through every period of his. One of the things you had mentioned that I found great was that you were really getting into the silence, but also like The Man Who Knew Too Much and the Gameau period, which is a period of Hitchcock that we've been able to touch on a little bit, but not too much, and hopefully we will be able to explore that further, because the early period of Hitchcock is pretty much Hitchcock in the rawest form possible, because you get it in America, you get a more like refined version of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he was much more experimental at the time too. He went into a lot of different genres that he would later kind of, you know, focus in on suspense, but you get a lot more variety in that period as well.
Yeah, and a lot of it has to do with the influence that he was receiving from people like Murnau, and I'm sure Paul Lenny has an inspiration or two in there, and he said that the films of Alice Guy Blaché were an inspiration as well. So, you know, there are things he's kind of culling from to define his style. And I mean, if you look as early as The Lodger, there is a lot of him drawing from the expressionist movement, which he carries over into America, but I don't think it's at the same level of influence as it was in the early British Gameau period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's still, even at those early silent ones, even the most obscure things, you get those glimpses really early on of some of his like style. It's why I love going through those old ones, because you start. My mom and I actually watched through all the silence in order chronologically, and you see his style develop through all of it, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. By the time you get to like, well, I wouldn't necessarily count Jamaica in this whole experience, because Jamaica Inn's kind of a nightmare for him, and it's not his fault. I mean, I love Charles Laughton, but Charles Laughton can be a dick. I mean, like, it's funny though. You watch Night of the Hunter and all the special features on there. Apparently, he had mellowed by that point, but apparently he ran Jamaica Inn for the most part because it was his production company doing it. But I guess The Lady Vanishes is kind of the culmination of the British Gameau period, where almost everything he has employed up to this point is put to use in that film, and then from there he takes it over to America. He does Rebecca, but it's not like necessarily a pure Hitchcock film, because if you it isn't released yet, but when you finally listen to the Rebecca episode, you will get to hear me talk about how much I don't really like David O. Selznick. And I should clarify, because like it's not that I hate him as a creative by any stretch. It's just that like you read about him and he's an utter ass. But but he did produce some of the greatest things ever. Like King Kong is a treasured thing of mine. So
right.
But then by the time when he's working with Selznick, he's also getting loaned out to other studios. He works with Walter Wanger on Foreign Correspondent, and it kind of actually leads into what we're going to discuss. So before we get to the first film, which is tied closely into that chronology, we touched a little bit on it, but yeah, you are introduced to Hitchcock early on as a humorist or a person of comedy, not necessarily a person of drama and suspense and horror. What do you think about Hitchcock the humorist? Like, what is it for you that just like really kind of hits that point home?
Well, again, I think very early on, probably largely part of watching Hitchcock resulted from this, but I've always kind of had a little bit of a macabre sense of humor, if you will. I think that kind of stuff is funny. Yeah. And so, to me, like every one of his movies, that's some of my favorite stuff is the funny parts within them. Like you said, there's always humor, no matter how dramatic or suspenseful something is. There's always those moments of humor, and to me, that's the magic. That if you can draw humor out of some dire situations, that's really talented, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like I said, that was my early introduction to him. I also loved, like you mentioned, some of those the books, the collections that he had of short stories. When he was still alive, he was actually writing the introductions to those collections. Mm-hmm. And again, he's just got that droll sense of humor that goes through all of it. So, I don't know. To me, like, I just feel like that's somehow over all of his other stuff, all of the suspense and the drama and the romance, the comedy is, I think, what drives him forward. I like to picture him going through all this stuff, you know, in frenzy just so he can make some jokes about the eating gross stuff, you know. Like, that was his whole point of putting that movie together, I think.
I mean, well, it's interesting rewatching Frenzy 2 weeks ago how the humor was much more apparent to me than it was when I saw Frenzy at a younger age.
Right.
Not too young. I waited until I was about like 16 to watch Frenzy. But like it's one of those things that, like, yes, it's the food scene, but also just like kind of the incidental conversations about like the state of like the psychopathic killer, like right. Like that opening scene in the bar, or like it's one of those opening scenes in the bar with the RAF guy going into the bar to get a drink, and then the two inspectors are discussing the pathology and the psychological implications of being a serial murderer or serial rapist. It's really, really dry, matter of fact, and it's being counterpointed with like everything that's going on, and so it just comes off as funny. It's not inherently funny, but it's coming off as ridiculous to an entertaining degree. And then there's also, I think one of the funniest scenes in Frenzy, even though it's also one of the grossest, is the necktie murderer having to get his necktie pinned back and going into a truck full of potato sacks and taking the body out of the potato sacks and having to crack open a woman's rigor mortis fingers to get the pin. Like, it's not. It's that kind of funny that makes you feel guilty about laughing about it.
Right. That's what he was the master of to me, you know.
It's that uncomfortable, macabre humor, which it's interesting because in this country we don't necessarily we attach a little bit more of a self-guilt to laughing at that humor, but in Britain it's a little bit more understood and a little bit more inherent in them. At least that's what Hitchcock makes it sound like anytime he's interviewed, and you have people like scholars explaining his macabre sense of style, which, you know, I think it becomes more normalized with Alfred Hitchcock Presents.
Right, absolutely.
Because that's where it's going on a mass scale, and it's more, I guess it's in the form of puns, but it goes beyond that. I think to a wonderful degree.
Well, I think because I'm also a huge Monty Python fan, and I think
of course you are.
Of course I am. Yeah. I should have been born much earlier, I think, but that's another discussion. But I think that checks out. Like, you watch their humor, and there's a lot of death humor in that, and that's, you know, they're come along a little bit later. But I think that whole dry British approach to life, it just all fits together, and I love it.
Yeah, it's a humor, and I love Monty Python too, and it's very similar in the sense that, like, it's a humor that doesn't it doesn't like attempt to dismantle the establishment, but it does kind of accidentally in the process. Like,
right.
It's weird how you watch a Monty Python sketch on like the Inquisition, and it has similar Hitchcockian quality to it. But yeah, and ultimately, there's a part of me that feels like, similar to Tarantino, Hitchcock's a frustrated comedian. Wants really much to make the audience laugh. Like, he proclaims Psycho as a comedy, and I've watched it with that in mind, and he's not wrong.
Right.
I think it's just our experience with it is different, but
But you can see his mindset there. I think he approaches a lot of movie making with comedy in mind.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important to do that to a certain respect, because if you want the overall film going experience, you do want some humor into it. Like, I love great art cinema, but if there's not some form of levity in it, it can be tough to watch. Like, I think, like, the Coen brothers do it the best because they can do something as dark as No Country for Old Men, but that movie's hilarious.
Oh my
in
gosh.
several places.
You're hitting all my favorites here. You know, I love the Coen brothers too.
Oh, dude, Coen brothers is a family tradition in my household. That we watch Oh Brother Where Art Thou once a year.
Yeah.
Oh God, that movie's wonderful. But we're not here to talk about the Coen brothers. We're here to talk about Hitchcock.
That's right.
So we're going to jump right into the two films here, and then we'll also talk a little bit about Alfred Hitchcock Presents. But as stated before, Hitchcock, working with O. Selznick, amphetamine addict of wonder, and read anything.
Right.
He's nuts. But he's getting loaned out to other studios. Hitchcock's getting loaned out to other studios by O. Selznick, where it basically was like O. Selznick loaned him out. He got a bit of a paycheck, but Hitchcock also got paid. But that was the trade-off, instead of Hitchcock working for Selznick on the studios, because Selznick kind of spread his arms out a little bit further than most and was like working on 5 productions at once. It's
Right.
nuts. Some that didn't get off the ground. In that time, though, Hitchcock has finally moved to America. He's settling down with Alma Revel in Hollywood, and he and his wife don't quite fit in with the Hollywood, or with the British Hollywood crowd. They really come to America and embrace American values and American traditions, whereas a lot of the British elite in Hollywood are a little bit more homesick, it would seem like. So as a result, Hitchcock and Alma kind of make different friends outside of that. Among the friends they make are Clark Gable and Carole Lombard, Mrs. Clark Gable at that point. And Carole Lombard, we should talk a little bit about her. An enormously talented lady. She is the reason we have the definition of screwball comedy, because of her
Right.
performance in My Man Godfrey, a wonderful film that everybody should check out. It has William Powell in it. It's hilarious. And she becomes this screwball queen. Her life initially started out, she was very much working within comedy. She had an automobile accident and had facial reconstruction surgery. You really couldn't notice it unless you looked at like one particular point on her face where there was a scar. But it certainly didn't take away her beauty by any stretch of the imagination. And she pushed onward and forward through the screwball genre. By the time she gets to 1940, 1941, she's friends with Hitchcock, and the accounts vary because Hitchcock tells it as Carol asked me to do this movie, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, at RKO, so I agreed to do it because she's my friend. But RKO files show that, in fact, he was pursuing the project. So there's not a true clarity as to who was pursuing what. But I think it's safe to say that, like, Hitchcock, always a man to experiment, figured that he would maybe want to give something like this a shot.
Yeah.
And there's no reason not to. He's ultimately a man who's, like, doing anything to see what fits and what doesn't fit. The result is the film Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which comes out in 1941, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. I should stop saying that. We all know who directed these fucking movies. It was written by Norman Krasna. Norman Krasna, a very noted writer in the realm of screwball comedies, and won an Academy Award for Princess O'Rourke, which is also another good film. And it stars Carole Lombard, Robert Montgomery, and Gene Raymond. It's released early January 1941, and does pretty well box office wise. You shot for about $700,000. You get $1.4 million back. So, but the thing with Mr. and Mrs. Smith ultimately is that, as great a screwball comedy as it is, it being by a film by Hitchcock, it carries with it a certain weight of criticism. I think in the broadest sense, because when we are looking at a filmmaker's filmography, if something stands out, we tend to judge it a little harshly compared to, say, the films that fall within the guidelines. I actually think a good example of this, it's going to sound weird, but Kevin Smith travailed into darker territory not too long ago, which I think to great results, because I think those are two wonderful films. And then he's now kind of gone back to his more truly comedic fare.
Right.
But that's an example of a director that if you do something outside the norm, we tend to kind of look more quizzically and ask 500 questions about like whether or not this is merited or not, which is ridiculous. A filmmaker can make whatever the hell he wants to make, and we let Michael Curtiz do that all the time. So, and to an extent, Michael Bay nowadays. Your experience with Mr. and Mrs. Smith comes in college. That's the same for me. Like, I didn't find out about this film until years down the line because it's not something that's immensely talked about.
Yeah, well, and I mean, honestly, for a while, I didn't even know it existed because, again, this will date me, but I went to college like in the very early years of the internet. So IMDb was not yet a thing. The way that I knew about movies is my mom would get the Leonard Maltin like guide to video books.
Leonard Maltin.
Seriously, it was called The Book in our house.
It is the good book. It is.
Yeah. And when we would go, like, my mom would send us out, renting a movie was a big deal as a kid. Like, that was something we really wanted to do. And so she would send us to the movie store with the book. And she had marked every movie she'd ever seen. And if you came back with a movie she'd seen, you had to pay for it out of your pocket. But if you got something she hadn't seen, she'd pay for a movie, right? Mm-hmm. So that's how I initially kind of, I go through the Hitchcock list and find all the movies that he'd done. But at some point, and I don't know, the details of this are hazy a bit, but, not every movie ever made was in these books, obviously. And so I wasn't even aware of it until much later. When I finally did come across it in college, it was a amazing experience because by that point I was already huge My Man Godfrey fan. Yeah. Absolutely love that movie. One of my all-time favorites. So to find another Carole Lombard movie that I hadn't seen was just beautiful.
Yeah, and Carole Lombard, actually my experience with Lombard and let alone this film comes toward the end of her life, unfortunately. If people don't know about Carole Lombard, when World War II broke out with the bombing of Pearl Harbor, she jumped right in to selling war bonds and going on bond tours. Now, there's a small window here where this happens. She basically from December 7th, 1941 to January 16th, 1942, she pushes into the forefront of selling bonds and assisting men who are about to go to war. And what happens is, in a tragic set of circumstances, she's missing Clark Gable to the point where she wants to go home faster than the plan is initially intending. So she and her mother board a flight last minute to return to California. The plane refuels in Las Vegas. It takes off, and then it crashed into Double Up Peak near the Potosi Mountain. And she, along with everybody on board, 22 passengers, perish within an instant. The reason I know this, and frankly, it's one of those things that I'm fascinated with because prior to all of this, she filmed her last film, which is Ernst Lubitsch's To Be or Not to Be. And anybody who's listened to me on Real Nerds Podcast knows the reason I love this movie is because it co-stars a certain suave, sophisticated radio man named Jack Benny, which he's wonderful in the film. It's one of the best performances he ever gave because Lubitsch knew exactly what to do with him. But Lombard is amazing in that film. She's very much the lead in the film to a certain extent because she's carrying the plot along thanks to it's basically about her falling in love with a young pilot and having a secret romance behind her husband's back, her husband played by Jack Benny. And it's a film that I saw early on, like at age 11. And so Lombard became a point of fascination. So you tend to see a lot of her films. Like I saw I saw My Man Godfried early on. And but this one, you know, it was a gap filler that I didn't know existed. And thankfully Warner Brothers did put it out.
Right.
And actually, the end result regarding Hitchcock is that they were devastated. He and Alma were devastated by her death, as were a lot of people. Like her death affected a lot of people in Hollywood, not the least of which Clark Gable being her husband, but also, I mean, Jack Benny was grief stricken. He actually canceled his appearance on his weekly radio show for 1 week. Where it was so it ended up being nothing but songs by Dennis Day that night, because he was just not up to it. Like, it was just too big a blow. And Hitchcock and Alma are devastated, and they actually end up moving into Clark and Lombard's house after the fact. And that house that they lived in for the rest of their lives. So
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's a very it's amazing how much she affected the lives of people around her. But prior to To Be or Not to Be, she makes Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Like I say, also co-starring Robert Montgomery and Gene Raymond. Let's talk a little bit about the film. So it's very much a screwball comedy with a screwball premise. The opening of the film is essentially Carol Lombard and Robert Montgomery are in the middle of a fight where they lock themselves in their room until they figure it out, which is part of their rules of marriage. And it completely affects Robert Montgomery's ability to make a living as a lawyer.
Right.
It's a premise that if you did it today, you'd have the internet getting supremely upset with logic. Like, if you think they get angry about Batman movies, you need to see what they would do with this.
You really had to have suspension of disbelief at this point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But they reconcile. They're having breakfast before he goes to work, and you know, this movie teaches you a lot about basic relationship rules. And the first thing is, if you're married to Carol Lombard, let alone anybody, and they ask the question, if you could do it all over again, would you fall in love with me all over again? And if you say no, that's the wrong thing to say.
Yeah. If you hesitate, that's the wrong thing to say.
Yeah. So Robert Montgomery fucks up and says, no, I probably wouldn't. I would love to, like, stretch my wings further. Well, he gets his wish because the genie of fate brings in he works for the city government of the city that they got married in. It's Harry Deaver, played by Charles Halton. They got married in Idaho, but the jurisdiction of where they got married was all messed up, so their marriage license is not valid. So Deaver gives him his $2 back and tells him,
right,
"You can,
everything's fine.
Yeah, we're square now. The government has no responsibility over what happens over the course of the next 90 minutes." David Smith, Mr. Smith, decides he's going to kind of hold this information. But what we don't know is that Deaver, living in Idaho, was also friends with Carol Lombard via a friendship between Lombard and his sister. So she finds out about the invalid license, and now she knows. So already Krasna, maybe without even knowing it, is setting up a Hitchcock plot, or it would lend more credit to the fact that Hitchcock would pursue this project because there's a bomb underneath the table, and it's called them both knowing that the license is invalid, but neither one of them knows if the other one knows. Or no, she knows that he knows. He doesn't know that she knows.
He doesn't know that she knows.
Yeah,
but she doesn't know what he's planning to do with that information.
So there is a suspense. The first 15 to 20 minutes of this movie does act suspenseful, but not in the traditional Hitchcock manner. It's very much a suspense that's purely character driven and not necessarily plot driven.
Right.
So they go out to a pizzeria, which, by the way, this is, by record, the first film to mention pizza.
Which is crazy.
So right away, Mr. and Mrs. Smith is one of the greatest movies ever made because it introduced the greatest food ever made.
Absolutely.
Dude, I'm ordering pizza later today. But they go to a pizzeria, find out it's not the same pizzeria it once was, so the tension is further thickened, and it all comes to a head when they go back to the room, and Lombard just explodes when he comes out dressed in his nightshirt ready for bed. And she throws him out of the house, says that if our license is invalid, I'm not going to get remarried. I'm going to stretch my wings and flow free as a bird. And David realizes, I do love my wife. I'm going to do everything that I can to the point of harassment to get her back. And thus the comedy is set for David to pursue Anne. Meanwhile, Jeff, played by Gene Raymond, is David's co-worker, partner at the law firm, and he says he's going to help David and instead uses this as an opportunity to woo Anne in her newfound singleness. So there's a lot of shitty people here.
Well, I mean, what kind of a partner? Seriously.
Yeah, and I know it's very much like it's a great reveal. It's a great reveal in that movie, and it's hilarious. But it does like bring up immediately. It's just like, well, I don't really like Jeff doing that. But then you learn as you go along, you find that Jeff is probably much better of a person for her, like in terms of like decency and moral value. And David is basically like we call this today stalking and male gaze beyond all recognition. It is truly like the modern context of this film is problematic as all heck, but it does fall on the screwball comedy line. So in essence, it's forgivable only to that point.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, and I know you guys have discussed this a lot in other episodes. I don't want to retread too much, but to me, and I know you enjoy older movies and older comedies and stuff, I think it's fascinating to get inside the mindset of an audience. That how would an audience back then would have perceived this movie, and what type of world was this presented in? So I don't have a problem with enjoying movies that would be problematic if they were released today, as long as I understand the context of what's going on there,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, and I bring it up mainly to just kind of like to introduce this concept, but at the end of the day, it's a screwball comedy based within the traditional, at the time, structure of marriage and courtship and everything. So when you watch it with that lens, it's absolutely fine. I mean, if you're able to get past it, if you're somebody who can't get past that stuff, these movies aren't for you.
Right.
Which is totally fine. But the screwball comedy element of the film is pretty efficient. I will say that this is not my favorite Krasna script. I think the dialogue is not the same level as, say, a Princess O'Rourke or any of the other films he worked on, and but there's some wonderful moments of screwball humor, not the least of which is finding out that Jeff doesn't drink and then Carol Lombard proceeding to ply him with alcohol.
Right.
Which, and it's a wonderfully timed and well-paced scene that kind of shows off Hitchcock's ability to know how to work within this mindset. It's not too dissimilar to how we view Howard Hawks as a screwball director, because Howard Hawks didn't just do comedies. He mainly did dramas or action adventure films, or in the case of The Thing from Another World, a horror movie. So, but there was this other talent that Hawks had that he was able to put out to great effect, not the least of which with Bringing Up Baby. And Hitchcock, I think, possesses similar talent in that respect. But there's also the Hitchcock touch in this film. There's a lot of POV. There's a very much a fluidity to this film that I think certain screwball comedies don't possess. Like, the camera movement in this movie is extremely fluid and well timed and calculated. Like, it is pre-planned in the way that Hitchcock would do things.
Well, another big Hitchcock signature in this movie comes shortly. Well, I think this is right before the drunk scene. Yeah, is a big like showpiece of this famous location. In this case, it was the World's Fair in New York. There.
Yep. And
they're up on the parachute ride and get stuck in the rain, and featuring a big famous place is I mean, obviously he did that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge set piece that he uses to full advantage and creates a moment. Usually it's for suspense. In this case, it's very much for comedy purposes, and there's also it's not a huge location per se, but the lodge at the end of the movie has got a look to it and a feel to it that is decidedly Americana in its approach, but the pursuit and the chase keeps happening throughout the movie. It all leads at the end to a lodge up in the mountains where they're going to go where Jeff and Ann are going to go skiing, and come to find out that David, it appears, has been standing out there for so long waiting for them because David remembered that he and Ann were going to go up here this weekend. He's frozen in the snow. They bring him in, and they try to bring him back to consciousness, and Carol Lombard's defenses are starting to weaken on David. But then, it's revealed that David's faking this because it's all still part of his crazy scheme to get back together with Ann. The film comes to a head with certain things being revealed about Jeff, but also a lot of things really being revealed about Ann. Like, her character in the film it's interesting how much agency she has in this movie, to the point where it's one of the, like, we've talked about on other episodes about Hitchcock female leads and how much agency do they have and who has the most. And as of this point within the discussion, it's usually been Grace Kelly and Rear Window because she has a lot of agency in the movie. Mm-hmm. But even if you don't see it that way, there's a lot of decisions she makes. Lombard's making decisions in this movie for herself.
Absolutely.
I think like the ending might be a little debatable, but I think ultimately she's choosing to be back with David at that point.
Well, and it kind of checks out if the backstory being true. I mean, first of all, we know Hitchcock was friends with Carol Lombard, but also that supposedly she pursued him to make this movie. It would make sense that she would want a role where she's in control.
No, absolutely. She would be the one pursuing this situation, and so therefore, in a lot of her films, she holds up with the men, and in most every fashion. I think My Man Gottfried is a bit of an exception because she's so ditzy beyond all belief,
right?
that it's very much William Powell making a lot of decisions. But like even in To Be or Not to Be, Carol Lombard is making active decisions, and there's very little regret in her decisions beyond the surface level of, I wish I hadn't cheated on my husband. But she's actively making decisions to improve the situation for the people around her that are at risk of being captured by the Nazis. So she was a very powerful woman in that respect, and held a lot of decision making within her realm with each role she played. Mm-hmm. So by the end, you have David and Ann playing the will they won't they game into the ground.
Right.
They up to the last minute is like the only time they've finally made it together is when the camera pans up to, I should do the setup. She's putting on skis to go out skiing, but she can't get them on. So David helps her, but then she's like, I can do it myself. And then Anne starts calling out for help, and David says, I'll help you, won't I? And the camera pans up to the top of the skis, and you hear them making out, and the skis cross into an X. And then the camera fades out, the end, an RKO radio picture. And if you've ever seen that Family Guy bit where they make fun of panning the camera away when people are about to make out, and I think it's Lois's father is just like, yeah, you know what that means? It means we're gonna do it. Like, that's pretty much that's the example of this.
That is absolutely what that is there for.
And it's a trope that I think I love that it exists in the older period because it is like so on the nose, but it's so charming at the same time. Like it's never an eye roll or a frustration for me. Like it is very much like, yeah, like
I know what's going on here.
And it dispels the rumor that movies in the 30s, 40s, and 50s were a bunch of clean-cut, wholesome stuff. I'm like, no.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, I've talked about Doris Day and her legacy. I'm just like, half the movies she made were sex comedies, guys. Like,
yeah, they had to be, they had to dance around the subject more, but that's what it was about.
Yeah, it's there. It's totally there.
One interesting thing about the skis thing, I don't know if you noticed this, because it kind of appears like at the end, he's coming to save her, right? Mm-hmm. But there is a moment there where she's getting her skis on successfully, and she looks over at him, and she actually unclicks the binding on her ski.
Yep, because
to show that, to try to trick him that she still needs help. She's putting on a show to get him to come to her.
Yeah, and in consequence, David has been putting on a show in his own right, so its turnabout is fair play. Like,
right.
It is very much a battle of the sexes in that regard, and it's interesting. Like, I mean, it's not the most refined screwball comedy ever made, but it is right. but it is one that holds a lot of like promise and manages to keep you engaged as an audience, because there's a second bomb under the table in the respect of like, will they or won't they get back together? But it's not the same as the Hitchcock bomb theory, but it's something that there is suspense in the movie. It's so weird that there is suspense in this screwball comedy, but not from a traditional sense. So that's why it's hard to pin Hitchcock into it.
Absolutely.
But in any case, the film is released. Hitchcock says he's never really was happy with it. He rarely talks about it in the Hitchcock-Truffaut interview and doesn't really discuss it outside of that. But the movie was a hit, made a profit, got really good reviews from at least Variety and a couple other places. Like New York Times wasn't interested in it, but it was successful enough to be reproduced in different fashions, not the least of which was the Lux Radio Theater, which was Cecil B. DeMille's bag on radio, where Carole Lombard did it with Bob Hope in June of 1941, about roughly around 6 to 7 months before her death. The Screen Guild Theater readapted it with Errol Flynn and Lana Turner, which I would love to listen to that one. And then again in 1942, later in the year with Joan Bennett, Robert Young, and Ralph Bellamy. And I love me some Ralph Bellamy. And then the Screen Directors Playhouse did it with Bob Montgomery, Mary Jane Croft, and Carlton Young. So it has had a life outside of the film itself, but it does seem to die after radio dies. So
well, and I'll tell you, when fast forward however many decades, they made another movie called Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and I heard about this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're remaking a great Alfred Hitchcock comedy.
And no.
And then it was not. It was Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, it was not great.
It's funny because I've had to think about that film recently, not because of this, but because of Dark Phoenix, because the guy who directed Dark Phoenix, Simon Kinberg, was the one who helped develop the concept for Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So it's interesting. And it's weird because when I heard there was a Mr. and Mrs. Smith from Hitchcock, I was just like, well, so he made a movie about two people who were spies that were also married? And then you watch him like, nope, not related. That's just a really good title for a movie.
Yeah, it's great. However, I would say that a sort of like spiritual successor, to me anyway, is The War of the Roses, which is a movie I love.
Yes, Danny DeVito's War of the Roses is very much this movie.
Yes, I mean, obviously it goes to a little darker, area, but
of course it's Danny DeVito.
Well, exactly, yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, that movie, to me, again, feeds into that whole macabre sense of humor that I have already developed with with Alfred Hitchcock. So when I saw that movie, I was like, "Yep, this is for me."
Dude, I followed down your path, but in a very different way. Because if we'll use DeVito examples, like Death to Smoochie was the movie that made me realize he's a genius. So
Underrated. I love that movie.
I don't understand why people bash that movie. Like I know why Jon Stewart does it because it's a joke, but but yeah, no, it's but Mr. and Mrs. Smith ultimately is one of those flicks that I think more people should take a look at, and not necessarily. You don't have to have Hitchcock baggage with it. I don't think
not at all.
You don't need it for that. But when you see what Hitchcock does in it, that is clearly him. There is a definite sense of like, okay, he clearly made this movie. But if you're not versed in his visual language, I don't think you're going to see it right away.
Right.
There's a fun little fact about this that kind of ties into Psycho, as it would turn out. So in the movie, Gene Raymond's character Jeff introduces Anne to his parents, and David manages to get Anne alone in the office, and it then pushes Jeff and his parents into a bathroom. Bathrooms are a big thing in Hitchcock movies, and this one in particular obviously doesn't show a toilet yet. But there was apparently the original soundtrack was a noisy flushing toilet, and instead they replaced, because again the Hays Code and the censors were worried about stuff like this, they changed it to clanging pipes, and that's what you get in that scene. So there's no. So we don't get, but this is the origin point where Hitchcock goes, one day I'm gonna show a bathroom.
I'm gonna show a toilet.
I'm gonna show a toilet flushing. You're going to hear the swirl of water going down, 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 down. And Alma said, "Hitch, are you okay?" Down, 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 down.
That's the origin of the toilet in Psycho. I never thought of that.
It's also the origin of the spiral in Vertigo and the poster. So again, this is welcome to Zach's history class, where it may not be correct, but it's certainly entertaining.
Hitch in the toilet.
Yeah, Hitch in the toilet. Oh my God, that should have been the title of this series, not the Shamley Silhouette. Bathroom talk with Hitch. But anyway, that wraps up Mr. and Mrs. Smith for us. The film. One quick note: it was the first Alfred Hitchcock movie to be shown on network television in the U.S., which makes a lot of sense because it would be the start of like them grabbing stuff that nobody places a lot of value on and reshowing it on TV. That's how TV builds up his reputation, is reshowing old movies before it even has content of its own. So. But yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, a wonderful film. The time in between that, Hitchcock makes a lot of dreary pictures. Some classics you might know of, like Spellbound and Suspicion and Notorious and Rope and Under Capricorn, the parodying case. And he does Transatlantic Pictures with Sidney Bernstein. That flops like crazy. So he starts working for the studios again. He does Rear Window with Paramount, and right after that, he decides that he wants to do this little story called The Trouble with Harry. Paramount's not particularly thrilled by doing it, but he made them a lot of money with Rear Window, so they said, sure, why don't you go ahead and do this little movie. They know full well that Trouble with Harry is not going to be the same value of Hitchcock as what they're used to getting from a financial sense. So in essence, you're not getting the typical Hitchcock movie that has a certain suspenseful quality to it. And actually, I lied. He first does it To Catch a Thief for Paramount. So he's made 2 successful films for them at this point. Mm-hmm. So The Trouble with Harry comes in the same year. So it's clearly very much a I'll do one for you, you do one for me kind of thing. Even if it's not super clear in the production notes. So, but we get The Trouble with Harry in 1955, directed by you know who, with a screenplay by John Michael Hayes, based on a novel by Jack Trevor Story, and it's a British story. And it's one of the second times where Hitchcock is adapting something made for a British audience into an American audience. He does it with Rope prior to this, where you're taking a British play by Patrick Hamilton and turning it into an American thing, and the translation in Rope is a different circumstance because you're dealing with a homosexual subtext and also just the nature of the violence and the attitude towards it, and the whole Nietzschean nonsense. But Trouble with Harry, though, is very much falls into that British humor we were discussing earlier on in the episode.
Yes.
And ultimately, what you have with Trouble with Harry is, I've had to watch it a couple times this year to prep for this, because the first time I rewatched it, I had forgotten how fun it was, and then I just kept going back to it because it's so different, but it's so Hitchcock at the same time. The first time I saw it, I don't think I gave it much thought initially, because it wasn't Psycho or The Birds or North by Northwest. So it was just kind of like, it was a small film that I understood. I was like about 14 when I saw it, and I understood why it was good, but I wasn't like as meshed with it. As an adult, I love this movie so fucking much. So this is the first Hitchcock film you see, though.
Yeah, absolutely. This is my introduction. This is where, and like you said, unlike Mr. and Mrs. Smith, his fingerprints are all over it. I mean, you can tell this is a Hitchcock movie from a mile away.
Oh yeah.
But it's just so, I mean, the humor, being able to find humor and digging up a body over and over again, and the way that they're all so casual about it, it's mind-blowing. It's so funny to me. When Miss Gravely, the names are so fantastic. Miss Gravely, Mrs. Wiggs, what's the Captain Wiles? I don't know. And even Sam Marlowe, who's half Sam Spade and half Philip Marlowe. Like,
yeah.
all of it is it's brilliant. But I think the moment that this is going to be like just amazing is Miss Gravely comes up and Captain Wiles is dragging the body along, and she comes up and she goes, "Oh, what seems to be the trouble?"
And she says, like, "Is the man dead?" And she just no, Captain Wiles says the man's dead, and she just kicks him.
Yeah,
just kicks him.
So yeah, it seems to be.
So we should we'll get some prior info out of the way.
Yes.
This movie's important for a lot of reasons, though, and reasons that we'll come to know throughout the history of cinema. It's the introduction of Shirley MacLaine into cinema. They found Shirley MacLaine. They were watching a play on Broadway. She was in it. They went to go ask for the woman who was playing that particular role, and they thought it was the original actress, but it turns out it was Shirley MacLaine, who was the understudy who was performing that night. They bring her in. She moves into film like a champ. Like, she's wonderful in this film. And this is also the first time Hitchcock works with Bernard Herrmann.
Yes.
We've talked about Bernard Herrmann a little bit, but we haven't gotten to chat about him too much, and I think he deserves an episode in and of himself. But
absolutely.
The beginning cue of this film and the first piece of music is actually something that was used in a prior piece, but then gets used for Trouble with Harry, and it basically becomes the Trouble with Harry theme. And then it's the beginning of Bernard Herrmann getting to have an experimental period with Hitch, where they produce some fantastic pieces, but this is the most lighthearted Herrmann score I've ever heard, ever. If you go back before this with stuff like Citizen Kane, and it doesn't even come close to like the quality of this, which is just like, it's probably one of the best comedy scores I've ever heard, hands down.
Well, it's perfect, and he totally captures that mix of like the macabre but also the comedy. It's the musical language is perfect. It's spot on.
That cue whenever they come on the body, like that dun, dun, dun. It's similar to in my head to the Cape Fear theme, and so it presents that danger, but the danger is so docile. But it's like he's very much Hitchcock's making fun of the things he normally tackles in this in other films with this, and it's interesting to see how he uses his technique to essentially create a story that's making fun of himself, not too dissimilarly from how like Mel Brooks takes a Hitchcock concept and makes High Anxiety,
right?
And like different approaches filmmaking wise, but the intent is there. And Trouble with Harry very much deals with I think this is a summation of what Hitchcock laughs about to himself when he's not around people. So
yes, absolutely.
It's very much that. But we can go through the plot here. We'll list the names of our wonderful cast here. You have Edmund Gwenn playing Captain Albert Wiles. You have John Forsythe, the beautiful John Forsythe, like that gorgeous man, playing Sam Marlowe, as you said, kind of a combo of Philip Marlowe and Sam Spade. You have Shirley MacLaine playing Jennifer Rogers. You have Mildred Natwick playing Miss Ivy Gravely, and she's wonderful in the movie.
Yes.
Absolutely delight. Mildred Dunnock playing Mrs. Wiggs, or Wiggy. You have Jerry Mathers as Arnie Rogers. Jerry Mathers, also known as Beaver Cleaver, in Leave It to Beaver, which, by the way, full disclosure, I'm thoroughly convinced that Harry actually died because Eddie Haskell had something to do with it. Terrible theory, but, hey, I'm going to throw out any possibility that I can. Conspiracy is fun. Royal Dano plays Deputy Sheriff Calvin Wiggs. Royal Dano's interesting because he's in a lot. Like, one of the last things he did was Twin Peaks, playing Judge Clinton Sternwood, which I blew my mind rewatching it because I was just like, he's in Twin Peaks. And he died not too long after that. He's also in Ghoulies 2, which I wish I didn't know that. But and you also have Parker Fenley playing the millionaire who buys Sam's paintings. Parker Fenley, I want to bring up. He's a pretty interesting cat. He did a lot of radio and a lot of movie later on in his career, but in radio he played a lot of like East Coast characters, like kind of that waspish voice, but he also did it in different variations. One of the big things he was in the Fred Allen Show. He played Titus Moody, who was an East Coast New England farmer who just like spoke with this kind of like just very matter of fact, like, well, I don't know, bud, I don't know. And you hear it a little bit in his portrayal where he's just like, you can be unreasonable if you want. I don't care. You want a bunch of strawberries delivered? Okay. Like, I'll have to send you a clip. Like, it's pretty interesting, like, because he makes his bread and butter off of that.
That's funny because I never would have pictured that seeing his performance. Yeah, to me, he's a millionaire, but
yeah,
I'd like to compare that. That's interesting.
It's fascinating. But so the plot is, we start off in beautiful Vermont, beautiful scenery, beautiful photography. The exteriors of this film were shot on location. The interior was shot on sets. In fact, it was so much to the meticulous nature of Hitchcock that they had to bring leaves from Vermont and then glue them back to the trees that were on the sets. This man was insane. That's it. But you know, it's funny. It's not too dissimilar from how John Carpenter and his crew on Halloween had to reuse their fall leaves because they were shooting Halloween during the summer in California. So you would get those leaves, you'd blow them all over the place, and then the crew was gathering them up again and putting them into a bag and then throwing them out again. So very similar premise. And ultimately, it came down to an issue with shooting outdoors that led them going back into set and also Hitchcock did not like working on location, so all falls.
It's funny because of all the leaves. There's several times throughout the movie where you'll see like a random leaf stuck on people.
Yep.
I think that's because they did that blowing of the leaves around, like you said.
Yeah, but
on this as well.
It's all got some glue on it.
Yeah.
But so the film itself takes place in Highwater, Vermont, even though those exteriors were shot in Craftsbury, Vermont. And the scenery is beautiful. It's tranquil. It's a small town in the East Coast. All is fine. Little Arnie is walking around with his ray gun or his army gun and just travailing the woods, not a care in the world. And he comes around and he finds the body of Harry Worp lying there dead. Get that wonderful music cue, which I'll lay into this episode multiple times, as much as I can without getting sued. And Harry's dead as a doornail. The thing that indicates that he's dead, other than his lifelessness, is a small little trickle of blood on the forehead, which I think is a beautiful touch, considering that the level of violence that was acceptable at the time was almost non-existent.
Right. And
to be able to have it in a movie that is relatively lighthearted and in certain aspects is pretty fascinating. Like it's again that molding of the dark and the twisted and the macabre into this idyllic setting, which is something that he would do before and after. Like he did some stuff like this in Shadow of a Doubt, but this is the extreme version of it to a large extent. So Arnie sees the body, he runs away. Captain Albert Wiles, meanwhile, is finishing his hunting for the day. He hasn't caught anything, and he says something so beautiful where he's just like, it goes along the lines of, if people aren't excited for you, then they can't be. Then you can't disappoint them when you come up with nothing. Like it's such a beautiful little line that watching it this week, I was just like, yep, that's how life is, Mr. Wiles. That's how life is, Captain. So he goes wandering around. He finds a sign that says no hunting, and he just tosses it away. So he's very American.
Right.
Goes and then suddenly happens upon Harry's body. He assumes that he's killed him because there's no other way that this dead man would be dead on the ground. So he's trying to do something with it, but people keep coming by. The first of which is Mrs. Rogers, who comes across it with Arnie, and she's relieved to see that this body is dead and thanks Providence. Arnie asks who Providence is, and she says a very good friend. And they leave the body, and Wiles is kind of taken aback by her callousness. And then a bum comes by and steals Harry's shoes. Oh, wait, no, before that, Dr. Greenbow
Right.
is the coroner is walking through the woods reading a book, not paying attention to anything. Trips over Harry's leg, and in what I think is one of the most beautifully blocked moments in a Hitchcock movie, it's definitely in the top 10, if not like at the very least at number 5, is he trips over the body, and he manages to, as such, continue reading the book without even noticing the body.
Right. He kind of feels around for his glasses and then just moves on.
Yeah, and that's the humor that you are referring to immediately. It's just like, I've got this corpse in the middle of the forest. I've just tripped over it, but this book is so interesting.
It's such a good book.
It's such a good book. It's probably the best book. I think it was Forever Amber, because that was always fascinating to people in the 40s. It was a sexy book back then, guys. And then finally a tramp comes by, steals the shoes off this dead man.
He kept the rags, though. He kept the rags that he took off of his feet, just in case.
Oh yeah, no, it's true. He's practical and polite. If not,
right.
He's probably the most efficient tramp.
Right.
He's polite. Everybody in this movie is polite. It's a thread throughout this movie. Everybody is super polite in this movie. It's redonkulous. But Mrs. Gravely and Captain Wiles, they meet up. Miss Gravely is a little hesitant at first to really acknowledge anything. She's kind of playing it cool, kicks the body, and kind of tries to shrug it off. And Wiles and Gravely have this beautiful, beautiful relationship that permeates into the film. This older couple, these older people who find some form of love between them in their golden years, and she invites him over for blueberry muffins and maybe a little bit of elderberry wine, which gets Captain Wiles excited. What I find interesting is that she doesn't really believe in herself, and Captain Wiles is pretty unsure too, so they're a match made in heaven. Like,
yes. Oh, it's beautiful.
These two very unsure people. We move past that point, and we hear some small singing in the distance. And who is it? But I'm assuming it's not the voice of John Forsythe, unless otherwise.
Doesn't sound like it.
No, it's not. But a little song is being played called "Flagging the Train to Tuscaloosa," and thus we are introduced to Sam Marlowe. In the process of that song being sung, two things are being done. One is beautiful setup of the scale and scope of the town without losing the small town touch. It establishes the community and what it is. It's comedy filmmaking at its finest because it's taking an artistic approach to the environment and not just placing the camera and saying, okay, shoot, you know?
Right.
And then, but the other thing is flagging the train to Tuscaloosa. Now, how familiar are you with the history of this song?
Not that familiar, so enlighten me here.
Okay, so the bottom line is that there's a point in Hitchcock's career that starts here where studios are really trying to get him to put hit songs into his movies.
Right.
And, you know, I would imagine Hitchcock says immediately, no, that sounds fucking stupid. But nevertheless, they agree, and the compromise is basically reached that, you know, you have a song like this, but it's sung by John Forsythe's character. It's a song written by Raymond Scott. Forsythe is not the performer, but it's not really. There's no real like true lyrics to it. It's kind of like muddled lyrics mixed with a lot of whistling. There is a cash-in song titled "The Trouble with Harry" for this film, by the way. But the song "Flagging the Train to Tuscaloosa" is recorded, put out there, and if you listen to the song, I'll play a little bit for the audience, but it's very much a upbeat kind of jazzy affair with loud horns, and it's so interesting because like I think it would be fun to actually take that song. If you ever remade Trouble with Harry, use this at the end credits with an animated logo because it could work and it could play into the dark sense of humor, especially in the nostalgia world we live in today. It would work beautifully. But the recording of the cash-in song that's titled "The Trouble with Harry" is a recording sung by. It's a song by Floyd Huddleston with Herb Wiseman and Mark McIntyre, and it was also recorded by Ross Bagdasarian Sr., who we all know today as Alvin and the Chipmunks. Ross Bagdasarian. Ross Bagdasarian also in Rear Window. So
that's right, and I have to say, I liked Alvin and the Chipmunks. There were some disparaging remarks made in earlier episodes. I just want to defend them a little bit.
Oh no! I mean, I'm not the hugest fan, and my remarks are a little callous on them. But I do remember having fun with them as a kid. Like that Christmas album was all over our car stereo when we drove to the mall during Christmas time. So far be it for me to say that they had no influence on me. They clearly did. And I don't mind those Jason Lee movies that much. I or at least the first one. First
They're fun with the kids. I have a different perspective. But,
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Again, like.
But I grew up in the '80s with the new Alvin and the Chipmunks, with the Chipmunk Adventure, that kind of stuff.
Chipmunk Adventure is one of my favorite things about the Chipmunks.
There we go.
It's a wonderful film. And I remember that that theme song is still an incredible theme song to this day.
Absolutely.
We're the Chipmunks. It's wonderful. I actually remember the Chipmunks doing like a monster movie kind of parody video that I wore out because it was monster related. Anyway,
yes.
to get back to track, Sam Marlowe.
Back where we're at.
Yeah,
That's right.
Sam Marlowe. We established him. He's a painter. He's not. He's not a successful artist, but he's a good artist. Clearly, I know this because he's not drawing his actual drawings.
Right.
You got a really good artist to go ahead and do those paintings. John Farren, and then the picture of Harry that he draws is actually done by John Farren's wife Ray, and actually at the opening credit sequence when you have that kind of panoramic drawing, it's done by Saul Steinberg. Saul Steinberg, who did cartoons for the New Yorker and specifically View from the World of Ninth Avenue, which was a big recurring segment. So. But so he's not selling his paintings. Mrs. Wiggs and him are talking when Miss Gravely enters, and she's buying teacups or coffee cups for her impending date with Captain Wiles. And Sam just immediately starts listing his opinions on how Mrs. Gravely could look hotter. It's fun. Like it's one of those like. It's one of those humors that doesn't necessarily – you can't do it today, but it does work in the context of that film, absolutely. Like, yeah. It's a fun –
Well, a small fun bit is that he says, she says, how old do you think I am? And he guesses 50, and she says 42, but she really was 50 at the time.
Yeah.
So at least they were kind to the actress in that regard.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, far be it. Like, Hitchcock lets her have her moments, and it's absolutely wonderful. But all this is happening while a millionaire is looking at the paintings. Maybe we'll see him later. Who knows? Also, one thing that I thought was interesting is Sam cuts a pack of cigarettes in half.
Yeah.
And buys that.
Pay for the other half later.
Yeah, exactly. Which, I don't smoke cigarettes anymore, but man, like, that would have been a great idea to pitch to the 7-Eleven clerk. Like, what if I cut in half? I mean, like, I know one half won't be filtered, but the other one will. See, this is the thing you could only do with unfiltered cigarettes. It's why Lucky Strikes were so popular back then.
That's right.
But so Sam wanders through the forest, takes his etchings out, and starts to draw. Comes across Harry and kind of looks at it for a bit, and then starts drawing it.
Yeah.
Pays no attention.
Well, that moment. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Just that when he does the drawing and he's drawing this scene, this panorama of all the nature, and then he looks at his drawing and sees these odd shapes that he's drawn and is like, whoa, what's this here? And then realizes it's the feet. I love the idea that he could have accidentally drawn a dead body's feet and not realize that he drew that. That
actually would be incredible if that were the painting that Calvin Wiggs finds afterwards, is like the revealing of the body and not necessarily the face of a man.
Right.
It would just be interesting to see how they'd play with that. But regardless, he sees it and then he notices it, and he actually tries to tell him to get out of the way.
Yeah.
You're ruining my painting. Get out. Comes across Captain Wiles. They start talking about the situation. There's a time lapse by which point he finishes the picture of Harry's face, and the decision is made to interrogate or investigate Jennifer Rogers on the situation. And I'm trying to remember. I watched it last night, but I'm trying to remember that they decide at that point after he comes back to bury the body. Correct?
Yes, but first they want to find out more information because she's clearly the only one that knows who this guy is.
Right. So he goes to Jennifer's house, meets young Arnie, trades him a frog for fudge. He gives
dead rabbit.
Yeah, for the dead rabbit, and Arnie goes off with the dead rabbit. Yes, that's right, because it comes back to play.
Right.
And then Jennifer and Sam have a conversation about Harry. Jennifer reveals that Harry married her after her husband, who was his brother, died, on noble intentions. But on their wedding night, she finds out that he doesn't really love her, and it's much more of a, like, just doing it because I have to thing.
Yeah. But
he also has a sense of possessiveness, so when she leaves, he comes to find her, starts getting violent, she knocks him over the head with a milk bottle, and he goes staggering around, confused, claiming that he's going to find his wife and take her home.
Right.
So we're learning that Harry's an asshole, and we get more of that later on. But it's similar in a respect to they don't really. I love how they don't go into detail of what Harry exactly does. That's so egregious to Jennifer. It's very much like Rebecca, where it's very much just implied. There's just things implied about his demeanor, and as he's a figure much like Rebecca, that's not inherently present as a living, breathing thing. He kind of is a Rorschach for your worst fears and nightmares. Yeah.
You apply whatever to him. He's like a blank slate.
Yeah, exactly, and hence why it's so hilarious every time we keep putting him in the ground and digging him back up.
Right.
So
it dispels any like sympathy you would have for it, and it allows you to laugh at the situation.
Yeah, which is, I think, one of those inherent pieces of the humor that Hitchcock is attracted to when he sees a piece like this and says, I'm going to do this. So Sam goes off to help Captain Wiles bury the body. Captain Wiles then goes on his gets spiffed up, looking splendidly spiffed up for his date. Like, he cleans up, man. Like, that guy cleans up.
Right.
And he goes to Mrs. Gravely's house. Mrs. Gravely says, "What a surprise!" And he goes, "But you invited me." And she goes, "But it still feels like a surprise." Their relationship is so lovely, and I love it. It's so adorable. I love it.
It is. They're so cute.
Oh, God, it is. And so they sit down to have their blueberry muffins and coffee, and little Arnie comes over with a dead rabbit. And Mrs. Gravely asks, "Where'd you find it?" And little Arnie goes, "Buy the blueberry muffins."
Right.
We should talk a little bit about Mathers. He's pretty much a genius in this movie.
He is. He really is. He knows he's driving it all along. He figures out how to get the best out of everyone.
Yeah, he's like, Sam sees him as an inconvenience. I just think he's very much like fate popping in and out. And it's easy to see how an actor like that, who's so powerful with his approach, even at that young age, of course you cast him and Leave It to Beaver, and of course he's as popular as he is for years. And actually listening to Mathers talk about his time on set with Hitchcock and McClane is pretty delightful. If you have the Blu-ray of Trouble with Harry, it's a fun little bit to watch him all those years later. He trades the dead rabbit to Captain Wiles for 2 blueberry muffins, goes away, and they continue their date. Captain Wiles goes back to bury the body with Sam. Or they go to bury the body again. Right. And then he goes back to Mrs. Gravely, and Mrs. Gravely reveals that she thinks she's the one who killed Harry, because Harry, in his stupor after getting hit with the milk bottle, came up to Mrs. Gravely and started to basically assault her.
Right.
And she hits him over the head again, knocks him out, but thinks she killed him and walks away. So that's why she's apprehensive around Captain Wiles when she sees the body of Harry, because she's seen Harry before. So
what's really interesting about that scene too is when she's describing what happened, and I'm assuming it's because of Hays Code or whatever at the time, that she's not allowed to say, like, he sexually assaulted me. So she says, "I was really irritated. He irritated me."
Yeah,
I believe is the word that she used. And he kept being like, "Oh, you struck him," and she's like, "I was really irritated."
Yeah, they use these are words that they use at the time, like irritated, attacked. It's a broad term. Like it's meant to cover every possible angle, depending on who's reading it or watching it. Which, I mean, they do that in radio a lot too. But like in film specifically, like, rape is handled very much in a weird broad context. It's not handled with specific definition. Like there's a lot of assault going on in early silent films, but it's because of how much you can show, it's
never. It's clear as you get older, but if you're young, you're not going to see it right away at all by any stretch of the imagination. So, I mean, a lot of horror films delve into that territory of the era too. So, it's very fascinating to see how, watching them years later, they kind of fall into that. But anyway, after this reveal, Gravely convinces Captain Wiles to dig up to bury the body and then to go to the police. And they find Sam and Jennifer hanging out at her house where they're kind of convinced everything is the end. Miss Gravely and Wiles show up and go, nope, that's not the case at all, guys. We got to do this all over again. They are trying to convince themselves that they should basically try to find a way to have the body discovered without having to implicate that they've been burying it and digging it up and burying it again. So they all go to deal with the body again, but Wiggy shows up and announces to Sam, hey, someone wants to buy your paintings. He's a millionaire. So they go back to Wiggy's dry goods store, speak with the millionaire, played by Parker Fenley, and Parker Fenley's like, well, these are beautiful paintings, and I think they're wonderful. And he says, like, well, I don't care what you think, or I don't care what anybody thinks. My paintings, I know they're good, because I made them.
Yeah, I don't care what the critic thinks. And who knows, the critic probably said, I like it, but he didn't care if the critic thought it was good or bad.
Yeah, it's we see this a lot today with our opinions about Rotten Tomatoes. It's the age-old thing, art versus critics and critics versus art. So, but so that Captain Wiles tells him to be reasonable and accept money for it, even though he's not going to accept money. And, millionaire says you can be as unreasonable as you want. And so Marlowe decides to get something for everybody. He gets a box of strawberries delivered daily to Jennifer. He goes through the list of stuff that he's going to get. Like, I mean, Wiggy wants a chromium-plated cash register that rings a bell. And then he goes to Mrs. Graves and he says, a beauty salon for you.
Right.
Like, that was one of those things where I'm just like, okay, that's just mean.
Right.
And then he goes down the line and finally gets to Jennifer again. It's just like, what would you want? And then he whispers something into the millionaire's ear, and he goes like, yeah, that should be easily arranged. We don't know what it is, so I guess our MacGuffin in this respect is the secret.
What did he whisper?
Well, actually, Harry's the MacGuffin, but there's also a MacGuffin within that whisper. Unlike Lost in Translation, we do learn what that thing that was being whispered is. So we don't have to debate it for years in normal conversation. I do love that movie, but I hate that conversation. It's not important. But so they Jennifer and Sam decide to get married. And it's amazing how fast you could fall in love in the 50s. Like it's pretty remarkable.
This is one day. Keep in mind, all takes place in one day.
No legwork whatsoever. Phil, I'm sure you had to have a long courtship before you tied the knot, and
I knew my wife for like 8 years, I think, before we got married.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, if you had lived in the 50s, it would have happened within 5 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe 7 years, something like that. Don't quote me on that, but yes.
Don't worry. We'll retract anything we have to in a later episode.
It's close enough. Yeah,
but so they go back to the house. They're ready to celebrate, but then Sam goes, "Darn it, we forgot about Harry again," because if they want to get married, Jennifer has to. They have to be sure that he's dead so that Jennifer is now legally unmarried so that they can get wed. So they go to dig up the body again in the attempts to have the coroner look it over and figure out the causes of death and basically kind of clear them all out of the way. Actually, an interesting point that Mrs. Gravely brings up is that, like, now that they're doing this again, there are now two people who possibly had a motive for killing him, which is Jennifer and Sam, because even though Sam just met Jennifer and they have just decided to get married, there is the possibility that they could see this as like a torrid love affair situation. So,
right.
Which already they're, they're so mixed up in like 5 different plots at this point that it doesn't like it wouldn't matter if they dug up that body one more time anyway.
Right.
And then a wonderful comedy of errors where they're trying to hide the body from Calvin Wiggs, who comes in and shows them, "Hey, I found your sketchbook," and Sam takes the sketchbook and shows him how Calvin's not appreciating his art. And I love Calvin's response, which is like, "You just destroyed federal evidence." Such a Coen,
what you just did.
Such a Coen Brothers-esque delivery by modern context. Like Hitchcock's doing it first, but
yes.
It's like you know what you just did, Everett. You just destroyed evidence. It's wonderful. But the coroner comes, sees the body, and they distract Calvin and get him to go away. Captain Wiles goes back to steal back Harry's shoes, but it looks like he's a coward when he decides to run out there. So when he comes back in, he has to confront Mrs. Gravely, and he's said throughout the film that he's encountered death many times and faced terrible danger. And then in a soft-spoken moment, he goes, "Mrs. Gravely, what if I was to tell you I was actually the captain of a tugboat?" And she says one of the most beautiful things, which is like, "Then I would say you were the most handsome tugboat captain that ever lived." And
yeah, that's right.
I was just like, God,
They're so sweet
get
together.
married, you old couple, get married.
Well, and she was not totally honest with him throughout the movie either.
Yeah, so
she obviously she lied about her encounter with the guy with Harry at first.
Yeah,
but she also, when they were having lunch, told him that the cup that he was drinking out of was like a family heirloom.
It's an interesting story of these two people like trying so desperately to impress one another that within themselves is the actual attraction. It's a wonderful, wonderful little piece. So they decide, after all this is said and done, wouldn't it be wonderful if Arnie were to rediscover the body?
Right.
So they take the body out and basically compel Arnie to go rediscover it again, like by just letting him go out and play and seeing the body again, and to go warn or to go let somebody know that he's found it. And they're waiting in the bushes, and they're going like, "What are you waiting for?" Or like Arnie comes to the body and he just stands there again. And they're going like, "What are you waiting for, Arnie? Go back and tell me. Go back and tell me. Run along, boy." And then Sam goes, "Beat it, you little creep."
Right.
I mean,
go back,
hurry
son.
home, son.
Yeah.
And then he goes back to warn Jennifer. They meanwhile reveal to the audience what Sam asked for the millionaire to get Jennifer and him, which was a double bed.
Right.
So, and they all just kind of giggle, and then a chyron comes up in front of Harry's feet that says "The trouble with Harry is over," which I love that they do that. It's one of my favorite things about old Hollywood sometimes, or even like really smart filmmakers who just kind of put it out there for people in a fun, kitschy way. And it's something I equate with to Mel Brooks nowadays, where it's just like, kind of, it's not a fourth wall break per se, but it addresses the existence of the film in and of itself in a
Right.
fairy tale type of way. And that thus ends The Trouble with Harry, the end in Alfred Hitchcock picture. It's a wonderful film. Like I feel like I've talked a lot about it, but like what when you watch this film nowadays, is it like is it hands down your favorite of Hitchcock's films in terms of the filmmaking, or is it just more of a personal thing?
Well, it's definitely a personal thing. To me, it's definitely the most funniest one. I don't know if I would put it. I mean, when you get me to ranking things, then I get all like caught up on myself. So I don't know if I could rank it.
Oh, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, exactly. But it is the one that's the closest to you, and I think you've described ultimately it is that macabre sense of humor kind of going throughout it. In rediscovering it for myself, I've kind of learned that the reason I love it is because it feels like it's the most Hitchcock on his own, like showing his emotions on his sleeve kind of thing. Like it's not in the same way that he does with like a Vertigo even like a psycho to an extent, like where he's dealing with psyches, but it's just like his heart is on his sleeve in this movie. Like it's very much a very sweet, albeit dark movie that falls in line with the things that amuses him. And I do like watching filmmakers having fun for themselves because the passion for it clearly shows, and I think it's very evident in here with the way it's shot, the way it's pre-planned, and the way it's executed, and the way the humor is handled is spectacular.
Well, I have a theory about it.
Yeah.
You're talking about it being like his most personal one. I think it's his most romantic movie, and not because of Sam Marlowe and Jennifer Rogers, but as we were talking about with Captain Wiles and Miss Gravely, like their relationship feels the most like a genuine romantic relationship than any of the other, glamorous things that he has in his other movies. And I think that it may be that relationship to him parallels his own marriage, because obviously we know they were very close.
Yeah.
I think that might represent more of his type of relationship than a lot of others that are in his movies.
I would be inclined to agree because of how devoted he was to Alma. You know, we haven't really been talking necessarily about the personal life of Hitchcock and the outside the films situations with Hitchcock, and obviously there's both positive and negative things that fall within that territory. But one thing is certain, and Alma is going to get her own episode. I am working on that because I don't want to do it with just a bunch of men talking about it. I would like to get a woman's perspective on it.
That's good, yeah.
Because it would be not only fair but correct. But the thing that I've noticed throughout this rewatch is the importance of Alma, not just from a filmmaking standpoint, but in terms of just how she pushed him to keep going in a lot of circumstances. And so this Gravely and Wiles do represent that. Even if it's not intentional, it does feel like there is something permeating from that you can compare, because I don't know if this is this could be a personal film for Hitchcock, but I do think ultimately it is an attempt to go outside his normal boundaries on a surface level. But once you dig deep, you see that stuff. And I think that the Jennifer Rogers Sam Marlowe relationship is the most traditionally Hitchcockian thing about it, because of like the banter back and forth and the smart assery that kind of permeates through.
Well, they're hilarious. They're really funny.
Oh, Shirley MacLaine is amazing in this movie. It is.
She really is
astounding that this is her first movie. And I think ultimately it's the homespun nature of the film that I think makes it stand out, not just in Hitchcock's oeuvre, but in terms of cinema, just like, here's a dark story with very, very kind people. And it's very much, we were talking about the Coen brothers all throughout this episode. It would be fair to assume that that the Coens have seen this movie and have taken more than one note from it.
I'm sure of it.
Yeah, there's or at the very least, the sense of humor. Like, what my favorite film they ever did is A Serious Man, and these two films can kind of correlate to each other in terms of like, there's something very like simple and not simple and sweet happening here, but it's also wrapped up in this dark cloak.
Right.
And even like their lighter fare, like Oh Brother Art Thou, or I'd even say The Lady Killers has a lot of influence from something like Trouble with Harry. The Lady Killers definitely has it, and like, it's weird how it doesn't really homage the original Lady Killers so much as it goes into the Trouble with Harry territory. Yeah, because them dumping the bodies over the bridge in Lady Killers is very similar to the way they're kind of casually getting rid of the Harry body in this movie.
Right. Well, and even their endings, because a lot of times Coen brothers, and people don't get their endings. They'll be very vague or ambiguous or whatever. And Hitchcock in this movie in particular, like, the end of it, they come up with this plot where the kid's gonna tell them, tell the police that he found this body yesterday or today, because he doesn't understand those things, and it's all going to be solved. But the the people who were all in on it are still at the top of the hill. The kid's running back to the house. There's state police involved. We don't know how this thing resolves.
Yeah.
And yet the movie tells us the trouble with Harry is over. So,
yeah.
He's like, yeah, it's fine. You get the point. You didn't need to spell everything out.
Yeah.
And I think they took a lot of that,
Yeah. It's actually, I didn't even think about it that way. That's a good point, because it does. Just because the movie tells us it's over doesn't necessarily mean it's over.
Right. They have not solved anything, really. They're still in a lot of trouble, potentially.
They may have to bury that body again for all they know.
Right.
It's a loop. They're stuck in a loop, Phil.
Yep. It's like Groundhog's Day.
Oh, God. The more I keep hearing Groundhog's Day being mentioned, the more I know I have to revisit it. I haven't watched it in a long time.
Oh, it's wonderful.
I know. It's one of those classic films that I don't go back to for whatever reason, but it's a good movie. Don't get me wrong.
It is.
The premiere was held in Vermont for this film, and revenue was donated to victims of a recent flood at that time. Contemporary reviews were meh, at least stateside. Bosley Crowther of the New York Times, who's a critic that every time I read his stuff, I kind of want to throw things at the wall. But then I just remember, it's okay. Rex Reed is worse. He is. But he says, it's not a particularly witty or clever script that John Michael Hayes has put together from a novel by Jack Trevor Story, nor does Mr. Hitchcock's direction make it spin. The pace is leisurely, almost sluggish, and the humor frequently is strained. But it does possess mild and mellow merriment all the way. The performances are beguiling in a briskly artificial style, and there's an especially disarming screwball blandness about the manner of Mrs. McLean. Yeah, Bosley Crowther didn't get this movie, clearly.
No, I don't think he was watching the same movie we did.
No, yeah. It's very similar to how whenever the other real nerds watch a Hunger Games movie and then Ryan watches a Hunger Games movie, they aren't watching the same movie. But there were critics who did appreciate it. The film was, however, brought to overseas to Europe, where it gained a huge appreciation. So much so that the film was re-released in America based on the status that it had been receiving overseas, and had been reevaluated within a relatively short amount of time. The reevaluation came almost immediately after, because of the exposure in Europe. Because Europe, as we said before, is going to get this humor in a way that we're not going to initially. It's weird because you don't see a lot of films that get a huge critical reevaluation within that short a period. Usually, especially within the cult status of stuff today, it takes time. And we're also very quick to declare things a masterpiece immediately. I know I do it all the time. But it was a disappointment at the box office initially. It only earned $3.5 million. And it played for a year, though, like I said, in England and Rome, and a year and a half in France. This is one of the Hitchcock Five, and you're familiar with the Hitchcock Five,
yes,
correct?
The Lost Films, if you will.
The Lost Films until 1984, when James Stewart did that wonderful trailer. I should play that trailer at some point, where Stewart's introducing each of the films, and it's Stewart in his later years, so he's just like, to me, this is one of Hitch's best, or you'll thrill to the trouble with Harry.
Right.
I love him. I'm here to tell you about a very special event. It's these films you probably saw 20 years ago. Well, they're fucking back. It was unavailable, though.
This gives me a revelation real quick.
Yeah.
I didn't even picture this. I didn't put this together before, but it's probably why I saw it when I was a kid. Because 1985, right? That's when they were released, something like that?
Yeah, they were finally reissued in 1984, along with the 4 other ones. Yeah.
So, I was 7, 8 at the time.
Uh-huh.
And that's probably when it was new at the video store. My parents were like, oh, let's go get the new movie that's ready. I never connected that before.
So so then I have a theory.
Okay.
James Stewart was aware of your existence.
Yes.
And he said, guys, we've got to get this movie out for Phil. Do it for Phil.
That's it.
For Phil.
We solved it.
Now, I don't want to hear. Yes, we could put out Vertigo, Rope, and Man Who Knew Too Much, but Trouble with Harry has to go to Phil. It's got to get to Phil. I don't know how we're gonna fucking do it. Now, Janet, listen to me. Janet, sit down. We're gonna do this.
You solved it. He brought it to me. I've never thought of that before. That totally makes sense.
Yeah, and then when James Stewart died, he said on his deathbed, "At least I got the Trouble with Harry out to Phil."
He did it.
Farewell, Mr. Vecchio, wherever you are. Dead. One of the joys of this podcast has been making James Stewart and Alfred Hitchcock say the word "fuck."
Let me tell you, you do some very good impressions. I've honestly been very impressed with several of them. So.
I'm trying. It's one of those things where we've been influenced by the Smod Castle and all that stuff, and Ralph Garman's impressions definitely inspired me at some point to just say, "Fuck it, I'm going to do this." But so anyway, yeah, that's the Trouble with Harry. Now we'll wrap up with the final piece of this Hitchcock humor segment with a little show called Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Oh,
yes.
You hear the funeral march of a marionette?
I hear it.
This is what it is. Yep. Oh, it sounds so plinky and wonderful, and then there's a big old silhouette coming through. It's almost as if though it's the inspiration for the title of this show. And
that's right.
Yeah. So yes, it's wonderful, and I love it. But yeah, the show starts off. It starts the same year as The Trouble with Harry comes out, 1955, and it goes into 1965. Between 1962 and 1965, it's renamed the Alfred Hitchcock Hour. The show is developed with the help of Joan Harrison and Norman Lloyd. Norman Lloyd, if you don't know, was the actor in Saboteur who falls off the Statue of Liberty.
Right.
And Norman Lloyd was a terrific actor, but also just a wonderful producer who got a lot of stuff done. Joan Harrison, Hitchcock's secretary, who then became a producer in her own right. And Lloyd and Harrison really get the show to the working precision that it is. Hitchcock has approval over the directors and the stories, and in order to obviously sell it, he does these interstitials at the beginning, at the end, to present the story and then to wrap up the story and tell you about next week. And it's really, they filmed a lot of them at once in a bulk. And the introductions and these monologues were all written by James B. Allardyce, who was a comedy writer and came from Ohio and really understood how to play into the Hitchcock sense of humor. And you said you watched these beginning as early as when it was on Nick at Night, which I wasn't even around for that Nick at Night. I found these on DVD later on.
Yeah, it was Alfred Hitchcock Presents and The Twilight Zone, and they were perfect companions for each other.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, to me, and it was by far the first director that I was aware of as a kid. Like as a kid, I don't know who. I mean, I loved E.T., but I didn't know who Steven Spielberg was. But I definitely knew who Alfred Hitchcock was because of those segments.
It's actually interesting. Hitchcock is the first one to do that for me. The one interesting one though that I didn't know who Martin Scorsese was until I saw him in interviews on regarding Hitchcock films. Mm-hmm. And other classic cinema. So my introduction to Martin Scorsese was listening to him rattle, or talk, and just like hearing Scorsese talk about those things. And then when I finally saw The Aviator, which was my first one I saw, I was just like, man, this guy's great. What else did he do? And then you open up a door and there's like a cabinet of classics fall on you like Fibber McGee in his closet. It's pretty delightful. But Alfred Hitchcock Presents, these interstitials and these opening monologues, they're so wonderful. If you've been listening to the show, a lot of the quotes that I'm pulling from at the beginning of each episode are from introductions, mainly from the Alfred Hitchcock Hour, but a few from Alfred Hitchcock Presents. One of my favorite ones is actually from one of the most famous episodes, which is Lamb for the Slaughter, which is the story is a woman who kills her husband by hitting him over the head with a frozen piece of meat.
Like a lamb shank.
Yeah, lamb shank. Yeah, and feeding that lamb shank to the officers who come to investigate. It's a wonderful thing. But at the beginning of the episode, he's shopping around with a grocery cart, and a cop is writing him a ticket, and he does. I have to play the introduction. I'll have to play the clip for it because it's a great clip. But it's like, I don't understand. I was in the right lane and all this stuff. Anyway, here's the story. But then there's a lot of other great introductions for it. My personal favorite one is the one I put in episode 2, where he's going through the film set and he goes like, films take a lot of time, camera, makeup men, all that stuff, all part of a team. I'm very happy. And they in turn, and then you hear a light crash and he turns and he goes, sometimes I think about getting out of this business. I just can't stop laughing when I think about it. Do you have a favorite Hitchcock intro that you could like pinpoint to?
I don't know. That might be tough. I'll tell you one of the things that my favorite parts of his were not even, I mean, I love the intros, but I loved also his bits when he would go to commercial. He would always do little bits where he made fun of the sponsors.
Yes, and that's a tradition that he's carrying on from radio. Not that he did, but that a lot of comedians of the era would make fun of the product. Like the most famous, not to bring Jack Benny back into this, but one of the most famous is that the reason that Jell-O is as popular as it is today is because Jell-O was saved by Jack Benny when he got it as a sponsor, and he and his announcer Don Wilson found a way to make fun of the product each and every week, and Jell-O sales rose up to the ceilings, and you couldn't keep that stuff on the shelves. So, and it continues into it. So Hitchcock clearly has the wherewithal to know he can poke fun at that stuff, and the stuff that Allardyce gives him allows him to kind of poke that finger a little bit at the sponsor's direction. And thankfully the sponsor's okay with it because they allow him to continue for close to 10 years. So
well, and they clearly understood that it was all part of the show,
Yeah, and it's a new medium too, and they're very willing to experiment with it, similar to how they would with radio, and then television specifically. What's interesting, as you brought this up earlier, is that Hitchcock is the first director a lot of people are aware of, at the very least from up till about the point my generation ends and another begins, because he certainly was one of the first where I'm like, Hitchcock means director. I think I knew of Spielberg's name, but I didn't know of his visage or his fun trucker hats. But at least I think that's what they are. But Hitchcock you are aware of, and in part thanks to those Universal Video introductions. But his visage is out there, his persona is out there, and he had this before, as early on as radio, but also just the way he kind of got involved with the press and the promotion of his films. Mm-hmm. But this is where it's blown up and it becomes a huge thing, because at this point we's on television every week. Audiences across America are seeing his visage on a weekly basis, and so the name of Hitchcock becomes a marker of quality, not just for the shows the stories he's showing, but also the humor that he's presenting. This influence extends into the movies, because now when you watch, at this point forward, when you watch a Hitchcock movie trailer, Hitchcock's in it. There's at the very least one or two trailers that have him in it for each film. The most famous of which is the Psycho trailer. Don't worry, I'm not going to play it again. Although I love that trailer, even though people...
I do too.
See, I'm glad you do. I mean, I get why my guest Marshall wasn't a fan of it. I totally understand it. I just love it because he's walking around acting all cheeky.
Well, again, it's my whole approach is that he made Psycho so he can make a video of him going around and joking about it.
Yeah,
That's why he made Psycho. He was like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to talk about this psycho killer, and I'm going to walk around, and that's what his plan was.
Yeah, he's... No. Were you fucking nuts? I don't really want to make this movie. I have to in order for me to do this fun little Funny or Die sketch.
Yeah, I got this great trailer planned out. It's like a movie.
Yeah, and not only that, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take it up a step and tell people this is so shocking that you can't tell anybody about it after you've seen it. So I'm going to make the publicity campaign a fucking nightmare for the theaters and the studio. It's a genius move, and he does it as late as Frenzy. He's in the trailer for Frenzy, looking through the market square where the grocers are, and kind of pulling out food and then talking about the movie you're about to see a trailer for. And it's so much so that like the last film he makes is Family Plot, and the poster of Family Plot is a lot of the characters and then a crystal ball, and inside that crystal ball is Hitchcock's head winking. So his persona was so marketed to the point where it's no surprise that we know who he is today, because they basically made it so through years of cultivating that personality and that image.
Right.
And it extends even beyond that, like you said, into those books, into the Three Investigators, into these Alfred Hitchcock mystery museum, like collections of short stories by pulp authors. That image and that visage is out there, and it's all thanks to these wonderful introductions, which you can find clips of them on YouTube if you are like interested in, like, you can, I think the actual Hitchcock Presents official page has a 10-minute clip of some of the best from the Alfred Hitchcock hour. It's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing to look at. And the stories in them are really good, too, and some of them are funny. Lamb for the Slaughter is a really funny story.
Yeah,
especially...
well, it's much like Twilight Zone. I would say it's almost divided down the middle. You've got really good creepy ones, but you also have some great comedy in those.
Yeah, and they delve further into that Trouble with Harry sense of humor, which I think is an important part of all that, because he was able to eventually win out his, like, proving that the audience did want it eventually. Like, even if it doesn't work financially with Trouble with Harry, it does work down the line.
Well, it almost seems like Trouble with Harry was testing ground for that. Like, this is where we're going with this. Let's see if this is going to work out.
Right. And point proven, because it's a television show that still sells plenty of DVD copies, which I'm thankful for, because like I mean streaming's nice, but I like to have them in my hand. So and if it's a show if it's that popular that you can maintain those sales, then God bless it for its existence.
Yeah.
So that's basically it. This is the Hitchcock comedy corner in that respect.
Can I point out two more Hitchcock comedies that I think deserve some attention?
Absolutely, yes.
So I was looking through all of his filmography and kind of thinking through it all, and there are two others that I think deserve the title of comedy in addition to these two we've discussed. A lot of them have humor throughout, but there's two that I think are more pure comedy than the rest. One of them is, you've just mentioned, Family Plot, which was his last movie.
Yes.
Which I think is highly underrated. I love that movie. I think it's really funny.
Oh, it's a wonderful film. It's my I never have an issue with it per se, but it is very clear, because you have it coming right after Frenzy, that two different things are being done by the ending point. But I would never discredit Family Plot. It's a wonderful film. It's one of the first Bruce Dern things I ever saw. So I have
Madeline Kahn.
Yeah, Karen Black.
And again, because of this, I think that the Coen brothers are inspired by Alfred Hitchcock, because they also alternate between drama and comedy, like, on a regular basis.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And the other one is one of his silent ones, which is The Farmer's Wife. And I don't know if you've watched this one or not.
I have. Yes, it is a comedy.
It's a drama comedy. It's a dramedy, if you will. But it's very, very funny. There's a lot of great gags with all the different potential, wives that he's looking for.
Right.
So if you have the taste for a silent film, that's a good comedy to look at as well.
Actually, it would be interesting to possibly do, if not another comedy episode on Hitchcock, I do want to do Family Plot, but I want to talk about it as it being the final thing. Right. But The Farmer's Wife, like, definitely when we get into the silent films, which we do have to get into, which I probably would want you back on for it because you'd be the one who's been watching them other than me. But yes, The Farmer's Wife is definitely one to explore because it's another area where he's testing a lot of new ground and trying to decide like what's his style, what's his technique, what works for him, what doesn't work for him. And The Farmer's Wife is a good film. It's a film that I wish they'd do a proper restoration on. But it's like, but the copies that I've seen are fine. They're watchable, I guess.
It works.
Yeah. It's hard when you've got Mill Creek or other companies kind of putting out like 15 other copies of them that were sourced from 10 different prints. So, but it's,
honestly, the early silent ones are easier to watch for me than some of the early talkie ones because the audio quality is so bad.
Oh, I agree until Kino Lorber put out Murder and Blackmail. They sound great. Like,
I need to pick that up then because my copies are still questionable.
Yeah, get the Blu-rays of them. They're $20 a pop, but it's Kino Lorber putting them out, and it's wonderful. But so that wraps up the Hitchcock comedy of it all. Phil, do you have any other final thoughts on Hitchcock and what he means to you and how he kind of forms a lot of how you approach stuff? Like your show, Mandarian Orange Show, and also Alex P. Keaton Is My Friend, you have a dark sensibility about you, and I'm sure that definitely comes from Hitchcock.
Well, it's definitely a part of it for sure. I mean, I think my sense of humor has definitely been formed to a certain degree because of Alfred Hitchcock, and I mean honestly, a large part of my interest in filmmaking, and I've had limited success. I went to college to be a filmmaker, and my one IMDb page is courtesy of you, Mr. Eastman, so I'm always grateful for that.
Yeah.
But I think that being aware of the creative process and of what all goes into making movies and just making things in general, it's why I'm doing podcasts, because I haven't broken into Hollywood yet, but I can make something now that I put out there, and I think Alfred Hitchcock always did that. Whoever he was working for, he made sure to get something done he wanted to get done. Sometimes he had to make deals, but he got it out there.
Yeah, it's very much that creative energy that he never truly lost. And what's interesting, ultimately, if you listened about his later years, is that he was trying very hard, like a lot of other filmmakers of his time, to stay relevant, but also to just keep doing things. And it just, at a certain point, it slows down and virtually becomes the end. But he was a guy who never stopped wanting to challenge himself and further create. Like, he makes Psycho primarily because he wants to do something different from what he's been doing for the past 10 years.
Right.
And that thus changes the game. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it always comes out as a singular piece of unique cinema. So,
yeah.
Well, thank you, Phil, for chatting with us today. And
yeah, thank you so much for having me, Zach.
Braving an illness.
I know. Sorry for the croaky voice.
Oh no, you're fine. You sound wonderful. Like, believe me. Like, if they've been hearing my croaky voice for now 8 episodes, then it would be
right.
Yeah. So, but that's gonna wrap it up for the Shamley Silhouette this time. You can follow the Shamley Silhouette on RealNerdsPodcast.com. You can look up our new Instagram page that has just been created as I'm recording this. It's at the Shamley Silhouette. I made the handle difficult so that if you really want to seek it out, you'll seek it out. You can also follow me on Real Nerd Zach on Instagram. The articles come out every 2 weeks, and the podcast episodes come out almost immediately after those articles, so be on the lookout for them on the Real Nerds podcast feed. Next episode is unknown because this is the last pre-planned recording that I am doing today, so we'll have to it'll be a mystery. A Hitchcock mystery.
You're going to keep us in suspense? Is that what you're telling me?
So yes, I will keep you in suspense. That's a radio show, guys. But yes, until next time, then this has been the Shamley Silhouette. Good night.
But all I need, yes indeed, is waiting for me there. So I'm flagging the trail. train to Tuscaloosa. Oh, I love that choo-choo sound. Flagging the train to Tuscaloosa. Flagging the train that's homeward